Hello, my name is Rachel Wing. This is my narrative speech for Speech 1110. My audience members are Amy and Joel Wing. When you are a young child, sometimes you do not think out actions before you do them. You act out of anger or sadness before talking about it and cooling down. I was a child who acted on instinct before thinking it through. Thinking about it now, it was unsafe and could have potentially been life-threatening. Although I realize this now, these factors never came across my 3-year-old mind. In 2007, I was 3 years old, and I got on my tricycle and biked around my hometown of Blair, Nebraska, all by myself. By the end of my speech, my audience will understand more about my experience biking around my town as a 3-year-old. That adventure on my pink sparkly tricycle consisted of a few scary situations, meeting new people, and the realization of the importance of family. My parents had left me to go to the grocery store. I had wanted to go, but they have not allowed me to. While I stayed home, my 2 sisters, Emily and Sarah, were to watch me. While Sarah was taking a nap and Emily was in the bathroom, I took my opportunity to sneak out of my house. I opened the garage and started to pedal down the street on my tricycle. I had made it all the way to the entrance of my neighborhood when someone had finally said something to me. There was an old man outside his house watering his plants. He yelled at me to get onto the sidewalk. I was basically hugging the shoulder of a very busy highway, and it was a very unsafe situation. Cars were speeding by the second, and so I decided it was a good idea to take his advice. Although this scary event happened, I continued on pedaling. I made it all the way to the second intersection of the highway, and I got there and pushed the button on the sidewalk. A biker came up behind me. Her name was Sarah, and she was very kind. She made me feel way more comfortable and less terrified. Eventually, she left me and continued on biking, and I was left all alone at the intersection. I was shaking with fear, too nervous to cross the street. After a few minutes of me sitting there by myself, a police officer had arrived to help me. He let me sit in the passenger seat of his car and play with his emergency lights while he figured out where my family was. After a few questions, it registered to me that I didn't even know where my parents were. The only family member I knew the whereabouts of was my brother Alex. He had been at baseball practice at the sports complex in Blair. The officer drove us there to pick him up, mid-interrupting his practice. Once Alex squeezed into the small back seat next to my tricycle, the officer gave us a ride to our house. The adventure was finally over, and it was time for me to go back home, the place I never should have left in the first place. Once we pulled into the driveway, I bolted out of the car and ran into my mom's arms. I was so confused as to why she was crying. Her tears were running down her face as she was hugging me. I made her bend down and rest her chin into my tiny little palms as I said, "It's okay, Mom. I didn't get arrested." She laughed as her voice broke from the sadness and fear that she had felt. My mom took me inside and sat me into the chair. She made it very clear to me that what I did was very dangerous. I could have gotten injured or even taken. My mom made me promise never to do anything like that again, and I agreed. But at the end of the day, all my family cared about was that I was home and I was safe. Even though this experience could have ended badly, I am thankful it did not. Now it is something my family and I can always look back on and laugh. As you can see, my little adventure around my hometown was the craziest thing that I had ever done. I got to meet a couple new people, experience a few scary situations, and I realized how important family is. Biking around your hometown as a 3-year-old is definitely not the smartest thing to do. Here I am 13 years later, and I can still remember every detail. It is a memory that neither my family nor I will ever forget. Even now, there are times where I act before I think. Sometimes you need to experience crazy life experiences to a certain extent. In order to do that, you need to act on impulse and not think so much.